All right, boys and girls, this is our last homework of the year. Now, don't get excited because we are done after this homework. We are done with homework for 2022. When we come back from vacation, we will be in 2023. Therefore, that's why I say we are done with our homework for the year, for this year, 2022. Okay, so let's go ahead and read homegrown, and then you are going to do some math. Okay, here we go. Homegrown. Let's do orange. Okay, homegrown. On Saturday, Eric, his sister Tasha, and Mama went shopping. Mama had agreed to take Eric to the garden center, and he could hardly wait to finally get there. Eric thought about all the vegetables he could plant in his garden. At the garden store, Eric picked out 6 sturdy, healthy tomato plants, 6 wire cages for them, and 8 pepper plants. He also chose the seeds he wanted, and he paid for everything himself. His neighbor, Mrs. Salter, had given him some poles to support the bean plants, so he didn't have to buy those. First thing the next morning, Eric was outside with his gardening tools, seeds, and plants. Then he saw something move in the soil. A worm, he exclaimed. Digging around in the soil where he intended to plant his garden, he discovered more worms. There are worms in my garden, Eric called out to Mrs. Salter. He hoped she would suggest what to do. You're lucky, Eric, she said. Worms are good for your garden because they help you keep the soil loose. Then it's easy for plants to grow downward and for rain to reach all the way down to them. Eric planted the seeds and plants. Then Mrs. Salter showed him how to put up the bean poles, and they put the wire cages around the little tomato plants too. When he was done, he rushed into the house to announce that he had a garden of his own. Eric watered his garden each day. In 2 weeks, he had tiny seedlings. By the end of July, the first vegetables in Eric's garden were ready to be picked. At dinner that night, Tasha tasted the squash. It's good, she said, looking surprised. Eric smiled. That's because it's homegrown. Okay? So Thursday, you're going to reread and answer questions 4 and 5. Okay, here we go. Questions 4 and 5. This is 4, this is 5. Question, which word best describes Eric's feelings when he saw the worm? Was he excited? Was he pleased? Was he scared? Was he worried? And number 5, how are worms good for a garden? Use details from the passage to support your answer. Write your response on another sheet, or you can find your little space right here. Estimations of sums. Ooh, we're going to estimate. Okay, so remember your steps for estimating. Okay, so it says round each number to the same place value, and then you're going to add. Okay, so they give you the example of 64 plus 37. So if I had the number 64, okay, I want to identify the digit that I'm going to round. So it's going to be this digit. So I look to my neighbor. If it's 5 or more, we up the score. 4 or less, we let it rest. Well, it's 4 or less. So I'm going to go ahead and let this 6 rest. So this is going to be 60. Okay. I know I'm going to round this digit, so I have to look to the number to my left. 5 or more, up the score. 4 or less, let it rest. Well, this is 5 or more, so I'm going to up the score to 40. Now I need to add 60 plus 40, and that is 100. Okay, so let's do maybe, they did A for you, but let's do B, C, and D, just to make sure that you guys have or know what, actually, let's do, I'm going to change it. Let's do 1, we're going to do B, and then we're going to do one of these where there is another place value, okay? All right, so if you look at number 1, okay, and we're going to round this digit, so 3. So you look to the neighbor, okay, that's 4 or less, so you're going to let it rest. So 3, and then, so this is going to rest, and that's going to be 30. Okay, so here we go. You're going to look at this digit. This is the tens. So 5 or more, up the score. 4 or less, let it rest. That's 5 or more. So we're going to up the score and everything becomes a 0. 30 plus 20 is 50. Okay. For this one, B, we're identifying the digit. So this is 6. Okay, so I have to look to the neighbor to the left. 5 or more, up the score. 4 or less, let it rest. Well, that's 5 or more. So I'm going to up this score by 1. So that's going to be 70. Okay, I'm going to identify this digit. I look to the neighbor. That's 4 or less. So I'm going to let it rest. So 9, and then that becomes a 0. That's 0. 7 plus 9. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So the answer is 160. Okay, a lot of extra steps, but it's okay because practice is good. Okay, so let's identify the digit that we are rounding. We're gonna round it. We're gonna round the hundreds. Okay, so let's look at the hundreds. We're gonna look to the neighbor. Okay, that's 4 or less. So we're gonna let it rest. So that's 6. We're gonna let rest. So it's gonna be 6, 0, 0. Okay, then we're gonna identify this digit. Look to the left. 5 or more, up the score. So we're going to up the score, this score to a 2. And then that's going to become 200. So 0, 0, 6 plus 2 is 8. So the answer is 800. Don't forget to round, boys and girls. Okay, do not forget to round. So we're doing the exact same thing as this. But do not forget to round. Okay, right here they do line up the digits, then estimate the sums. So you're going to line them up, line up the digits. So let's do this one, 356 plus 198. So I line them up. Okay, now we're going to round. Okay, so I'm going to round, we're rounding this. So I have to look to the neighbor. That is 5 or more, so I'm going to up the score. So that's 400. Okay, I'm identifying this digit, which is the hundreds. Oh, that's a 9. So I'm going to up the score. So this is going to be a 2, 0, 0. And I'm going to add them. So 4 plus 2 is 600. So this is going to be 600. Okay, a lot of extra steps right here, boys and girls, but it's okay. Practice is good. Okay, and that concludes your homework for Thursday and the homework for 2022.